but kept pushing, like, I really want this on the agenda, got it on the agenda, and it was standing room only that day. They flew in people, the librarian flew in people from the ACLU, I mean, you name it, from New York, they were all there.
Not necessarily people with a local interest.
No, absolutely not. And I just remember my legs were shaking, and but I knew that I had to stand up. And I just remember the day before I was worshiping, and I'm like, what are they going to do if they come after my family and my husband, my kids? And just remember being face down on the floor and going, you know what, God, I just surrender all of it to you. It's in your hands. I'm going to be obedient. There was that word again. I'm going to be obedient.
Hey, welcome to Storypower TV. I am your host, J Loren Norris. I'm really excited that you're here today. We have a guest in studio who has done probably the hardest thing you could possibly imagine, and that is go from being a mom, a family member, a wife, a daughter, to politics. I mean, for some of you, you just think that's crazy. Why would you even do that? And for others of you, you're like, well, what took so long? Why would we not be involved in that early on? Well, you're going to hear some stories from our guest today that are going to tell you a little bit about what that journey is like being in politics. I promise you, what you think it is and what it really is, those are two entirely different things. And you're going to hear some of that today from our guest on Storypower TV. Please help me welcome our guest, Miss Melanie Graft.
Thank you for inviting me.
Very glad to have you here. So, what inspired you from the beginning to get involved in this world we know as politics?
My daughter inspired me, and something that happened. I was an at-home mom. I have 3 children, homeschool, and very much kind of personality. I'm very much an introvert, actually. Just kind of wanted to blend into the woodwork, extremely shy. But one day, my daughter was 4 at the time, and we went to the public library. And it was in the children's section that she picked up a book called This Day in June, and it was of the LGBTQ Pride Parade, and it was written for children, and it had pictures in there of a man dressed in a nun's costume with an upside-down cross, and it also had men dressed in S&M clothing. And she proceeded to ask me questions at 4 years old that I was not ready to answer and I didn't feel were appropriate. So I actually went home the day that she found that book because I was angry, and I really felt that it was important that I don't do anything out of anger, and prayed about it. And I was up all night long, and I just kind of felt like I was trying to make a deal with God, like, that book is so horrendous, somebody else is going to say something, it doesn't need to be me, it doesn't need to be me, because this was right at the time that the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, was making the opinion, and I say opinion because people get confused and think that the Supreme Court makes laws.
Right.
They don't, they make opinions.
Right.
So they had just passed the opinion on homosexual marriage. And I thought, this is just not the time for this. This is controversial. I'm very much an introvert. I just did not. So I'm like, Lord, somebody else will surely say something. But it kept coming across to me, are you going to be obedient? The word was obedient. Are you going to be obedient to what I'm asking you to do? So I went back the next day and I picked up that book. It was still in the same place. And I said, I don't know if you've seen this, but it's not age appropriate. And it took away my parental rights. I think it would be wise if you would move it. Never said to ban it or burn it, which they turned it into that later on. So we moved from the Metroplex, and I really thought that Hood County was this conservative Christian bastion, this
Pleasantville.
Yeah, Pleasantville. I did.
Everything's in black and white.
Yes, and I was very apathetic. I wasn't involved because I'm like, I'm good. The rest of the world, and really kind of selfish too. Like, I'm in my own little paradise here. Everything is fine, and I don't live in Austin. I don't live in wherever. Like, I'm good, and just kind of really looking back, very selfish that way. Like, forget about everybody else. I'm good. My family's good. But what happened was that situation blew up, and it went into commissioner's court. I asked my then commissioner to put it on the agenda and was faced with some pushback, and but kept pushing, like, I really want this on the agenda, got it on the agenda, and it was standing room only that day. They flew in people, the librarian flew in people from the ACLU. I mean, you name it, from New York, they were all there.
Not necessarily people with a local interest.
No, absolutely not. And I just remember my legs were shaking, and but I knew that I had to stand up. And I just remember the day before I was worshiping, and I'm like, what are they going to do if they come after my family and my husband, my kids? And just remember being face down on the floor and going, you know what, God, I just surrender all of it to you. It's in your hands. I'm going to be obedient. There was that word again. I'm going to be obedient. And so it was discouraging to find out that the then judge and most of the commissioners were not, they ran as Republicans. They said they were Christians. They were not for me. They were against me. And so that book was moved to the adult section, but upon further research, we discovered that there were 61 books at that time. I want to say it was about 2015. I might be incorrect, but I feel it was 2015 that this happened. 61 books in the children's section that were like that, and worse in the young adults section.
Wow.
And we did do, we went through their procedures of petitioning and all the paperwork, and they just took the paperwork and used it against us. And that's where the book banner, book burner, people call me book burning Barbie, all came out. But I realized at that point, I'm like, something's wrong with our local government, because I felt like we were peeling back the layers of the onion. And I'm like, it shouldn't be like this. And
well, those books didn't get in there by accident. I
no.
mean, it's not like we woke up one day and somebody's like, oh, I just delivered 61 new books to the library, and the library didn't know they were there, or the librarians were unaware of the content, or, we put them in there because we actually think they're great for the kids.
Right. And
there had to be a process, which means it had to be intentional, which means somebody believes that's a good idea.
Yes, and you bring up an interesting point, because we found out that a lot of those books, they just gave them for free.
Of course they did.
They just gave them for free. And then a lot of them, I don't know if you've heard of the Stonewall Awards, but it's an LGBT award that they kind of give for LGBT books or art or movies, things like that. And so I believe that book was a Stonewall Award. So people hear, oh, well, it's an award-winning book. Well, you need to find out what kind of award, because has to do.
What were they congratulated for?
For pushing LGBTQ on children. And I just felt very strongly about protecting our children and protecting the minds of our children. I mean, I feel, I don't remember which leader it was. Was it Stalin that said something about, if you have the children, you have the future, something to that effect.
Well, I think it was Thomas Jefferson who also said the mindset of the school children in this generation will be the mindset of the government in the next.
That's where it's at. It's with the children. They're and so I felt like children needed to be protected. And here I was, and we were very much involved with our children, homeschooling, and I was faced with something that I had to explain to her at an age that was not at all appropriate at 4 years old.
You made a statement earlier. I want to clarify the word, the meaning, and the intent behind it. You said, she started asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. And part of me says, wasn't ready, meaning you didn't feel like it was the appropriate time, or do you mean I wasn't ready, meaning I wasn't prepared, I didn't know how to address this?
Meaning it wasn't the appropriate time. I knew how I would address it, but I just didn't feel that I didn't ever think I would have to address those issues at age 4.
I think my stepdaughter was 5 when I was driving her to school one day, and she asked me the question, is it okay for a girl to marry a girl? This would have been in the mid-90s, and I was flabbergasted that the question was coming up. I'm not even sure where it came from or how the notion came to her mind. So obviously the curiosity is there. We didn't have the proliferation of books that we have now in that category. Obviously there were no cell phones in the early 90s, so she wasn't seeing that stuff there. It wasn't on the TV shows that we were watching, because we were pretty strict about that. And she was attending a private school. Mm-hmm. So I don't know where that conversation even started, but obviously someone provoked that conversation in her mind. And it hit me pretty blindside. Now, fast forward 10 years, We're in our Ford Excursion at the stoplight, all the kids in the back, plus a couple of extras that are not ours. And the song by Katy Perry, I Kissed a Girl and I Liked It, came on. Mm-hmm. The song's playing, everybody in the car sing along with it. I'm just kind of trying to ignore it, but it's very sing-songy. It's designed to be addictive. And I hear some little voice from the back yell, I want to kiss a girl one day. And I turned the song off and readjusted my mirror. And I said, who said that? And of course, everybody's terrified. They're like, Dad just stopped the music to ask this question. He must be mad. So nobody wants to answer. And, you know, there's 3 girls. 2 of them are mine, or there's 4 girls in the back. 2 of them are mine, 2 of them are strangers. And I'm like, who said that? And then finally, my son, who at the time was probably 8, goes, I did. And I'm like, okay, buddy,
Thank God.
I'm totally okay with you one day kissing a girl. But if it's the 10 and 12-year-olds in the back seat, I'm concerned about that. And yet I know, you know, in the same way that Stalin and others have said, once you get the children's mind, you win the society. Further back than that, they've said if you win the music, you win the world. Mm-hmm. Because it transmits ideologies on so many different levels, the emotional level, the psychological level, the energetic level. And those ideas bypass the conscious mind.
Yes, especially like how you said that song was so sing-songy.
Yeah.
You know, kids I don't think always think about what they're singing like you and I do, but it's so catchy and then it gets stuck in their head.
And they repeat the
and
words.
they're subliminal.
Yes.
Mm-hmm, and that's where it starts.
When we train people on Storypower, one of the things we tell them is from the mirror to the media, stories are going to change your life. So the story that you're telling yourself in the mirror, I'm fat and unlovable, nobody wants me, or I'm going to be a great success, or the day is just not going my way, or life sucks. Whatever that story is, as long as you continue repeating it, you're shaping yourself to live that out for reality.
Absolutely.
And when you can embed that kind of a story into a song, everybody's had a song stuck in their head that just plays on repeat in their head because the melody, or they're trying to figure out that one word, or why did he say it that way. But as long as that's playing over and over in your head, it's training your subconscious brain to believe that that's true.
Absolutely.
And then act it out without your cognitive interruption. Mm-hmm. That's a scary thing. All right, so fast forward. You go into the battle against the 61 books in the public library. You take it to the commissioner's court. They bring in reinforcements. Again, this is obviously intentional.
Yes.
How do you think the plan started, for lack of a better term, on the other side? Was it passive, that the agenda was coming from a few people who were very sneaky and crafty and nobody actually stood up against it? Or was it a wave of intent by several people?
At the time, the librarian we had, she was very liberal. So I think that she allowed it. I do know that there are good librarians there. We have one who she prays over every single book that comes in, you know. So I think at the time that librarian had some intent. I don't think that the commissioners at the time or the judge were even aware of what was going on until this occurred. And then with the ACLU, I think that was more from the then librarian. I think she was bringing all of those people in, and I don't know if she worked in conjunction maybe with some of the commissioners. I just know that they were not friendly to me. We tried to speak with them, and they all took her side. But the positive to that was I was then approached to run as precinct chair for the Republican Party. And after I saw that and I want to be clear too, my concern wasn't only for my daughter. First and foremost, it was for my daughter. But I started thinking about all the other children who would be affected and the other parents. And so the scope of my concern was even much larger. It's like, this is affecting not just my child, but all the other children, which is part of our community. It's affecting our community. And it's not healthy. And when I say not healthy, I'm going to fast forward a little bit, but I had the opportunity to speak to a lady who helped kind of shape and move the LGBTQ movement from California to Texas and kind of the acceptance of homosexual marriage. She's now a Christian and an amazing woman, but she said something to me that really stuck with me. She said over 90% of LGBTQ people have suffered some kind of abuse in their life, usually sexual abuse. So when I talk about this, I want to be clear that I do have compassion and empathy and that's one of the reasons I fought against this, is because I felt like it was an indoctrination for our children. And, especially young people, middle school, even high school kids, they're looking for their identity. And if they don't have a family that roots them in the foundation of Christ, they just kind of blow around with the wind.
Right. And so it's whatever's trendy and whatever's popular.
And it's very trendy. The whole movement is very trendy. And so...
and today that trend is repelling ICE, right?
Yes.
But I've seen the street interviews where people are like, so what does ICE stand for? And they're like, I don't know, I just hate them. And you're like, is that even logical?
No, it's not.
I don't like cactuses either. I've never seen a cactus. I don't know what a cactus might do if I had one, but I don't like them.
But you're not going to start a movement to go cut them all down, right?
Sure they would, because they're
they would,
cacti.
yes.
Yeah. They're ICE. I don't know who they are, but we'll set them afire in the street. And for me, that vehement resistance is a learned behavior as well, and the blind submission to that vehement response is the most bizarre psychological thing that I've ever seen. The mob mentality is a part of that, where there's a whole lot of people kind of gathered around. But it also seems like there are trained psychological instigators who they're looking for the next thing, and they're moving from one topic du jour to another topic du jour just for the purpose of that resistance of what is normal. For me, the challenge is theologically, I believe that LGBT has some theological problems, and it puts your eternity at risk.
Yes,
theologically.
Absolutely.
Sociologically, I get it. If they're grown adults, what they do in their bedroom is their business. What I do in my bedroom with my wife is my business and nobody else's.
Right.
And I'm not going to put it out there in the streets for anybody to judge or to be obscure about. The difference is what I do in the bedroom with my wife. I don't take to somebody else's house with a storybook and go, here, teach your kids what I do with my wife. It's none of their business.
Exactly.
And you would think if they're making the claim, stay out of our bedrooms, that they would keep their bedroom to themselves as well.
Exactly.
But the reality is, not only are they saying this is what we do in our bedroom, we'll have a private pride parade, as private as a parade can be, so that you can't hide what we're doing in our bedroom. We're also going to prepare that content, and this is where the nefarious intent comes in for me. It's one thing to live a lifestyle that way. That's your choice as an adult.
Absolutely.
Your choice is your consequences, not my issue. But when your choice as an adult becomes prepared intent to negotiate with my child's inner being so that you can groom them into your world, because generally speaking, LGBT doesn't reproduce.
Right.
Then now we've moved to a different level. It's not your desire, your intent, your consequences. You're looking to rope somebody in. And I can only think Epstein Island.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're crossing the boundaries.
That.
They're infringing on our boundaries at that point.
And here's another sad reality that overlays that. When we look at so many law enforcement relationships today, someone defends their home with or without a weapon at the door jamb. This is my space, it's my property, don't come into my house. If you've got a warrant, we have a different level of discussion.
Right.
But if you just come to my door and decide that you're coming in to take my stuff, you're coming in to violate my space, you're coming in to violate my family, we're going to have a problem. And it's going to start at that doorway, if not at the front gate. But if it starts at the gate, my legal ground for the castle doctrine is exactly the same that it is at the front door, that it is at my bedroom door. So how far you come into my home is a different conversation. But at any one of those, lethal force is authorized according to laws currently. But in so many places, when that use of force is there, even a physical resistance as a shove, the homeowner is the one that's found guilty.
Right.
I mean, I've seen people declare, well, he was just climbing through your window to take your TV. Can't you just let him have the TV? You had to shoot him 3 times and now he's dead and we want $10 million from you. I'm like, what is wrong with you? I mean, at what point do we reward the criminal in the first place? And yet we can take probably 15 different categories of criminality and it's exactly the same, where the criminal has been converted to the victim.
Yes.
And the person who's trying to defend their space, their children from LGBT, their children from socialism, communism, their children from corrupt education,
yes,
their children from abduction. I mean, was that kid 9 or 10 years old? His little sister was being abducted by a guy who had a rap sheet of 13 other pedophilic type arrests. the guy grabs his sister, takes her off in the woods. He grabs his slingshot, shoots him in the head twice. The guy's unconscious. He takes his sister back inside, calls 911. The parents are being charged for the kid having possession of a slingshot. You're like, wait, what? I mean, and any other season of American history, this kid's a hero.
Right.
He did exactly what his parents trained him to do. He had the gall and the capacity to realize someone's in harm's way. I'm going to step in, and now we've made him the perpetrator.
It almost feels like in the Bible where it says, you know, what's wrong is right and what's right is wrong. Like we're living in that.
It's all upside down.
Yeah, it is all upside down. And I think it takes strong parents to, we're at the point, you know, if you have children, you're going to have to defend them.
And you're going to have to draw a line in the sand and
Yes.
then stand there in the sand until...
And that's what was so discouraging at Commissioner's Court is like, because we would go and speak to some of these commissioners personally and bring the book and show it to them. And it's pretty revolting. And just like you said, drawing the line in the sand, and they're just wanting to stand right on the line, in the middle, or on the fence, per se.
As
you know,
the defenders,
and not taking.
But the others are charging across
Yes,
it.
and to me, it was like, you can't take a side for children, not just my daughter, but all children. You don't see how egregious this is, and how awful this is, that you can't even pick a side to defend a child.
So what kind of conversation or pushback did you get from them? Did you get, you know, I'm trying to protect the career, or I'm trying to protect everyone, or they have rights, or I don't see what's wrong with it? What kind of answers did you get?
They didn't see what was wrong with it. I was too controversial. These people have rights too. But really, they didn't see what was wrong with it. They really didn't see what was wrong with it. It was just baffling to me because they all claim to be conservative Republicans, all of them. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, what is your definition of conservative? Because to me...
That's kind of that identify movement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I could put on a name badge that says I'm a giraffe, and
Yeah.
you know, according to the way people think today, if that's the way I identify, that's the way you have to treat me.
Well, and I think part of it too is, especially in Hood County, I mean, everyone's a Republican until they're not, because they know that's what they have to be to get elected in Hood County.
Right.
So it's okay to lie. It's okay to deceive. Now for me, it's not. It's not okay.
Taqiyya, I think, is what the Islam faith calls that. Taqiyya. I can lie to you.
Yes,
because it's to my
yep.
advantage. Yeah.
And I guess we have a little bit of that here in America too. But for me, in my beliefs, it's not okay to lie. I have deep conviction about that. So when I say I'm a conservative Republican, that actually means something to me. It means something, and part of that is that we defend children from things like that. That's just a small part of what being a conservative means to me.
Did you feel like Elijah on the Mount Carmel with the prophets?
Yes, and the other thing I think that was really disconcerting is at the time too, like I knew I was going to get pushback from the left. I was, you know, discouraged that I got pushback from the conservative Republican Commissioner's Court. But what really shocked me and really brought me to tears is I got pushback from my own church at the time, and from people I sat next to in church who said, there's something wrong with you, me, that you would even bring this up. Why can't you just live and let live? And you're doing something wrong. You're being hateful. And I was never hateful. It's not my nature to be hateful. I have friends who are LGBTQ, and I love them dearly. I don't agree. They know I don't agree with their lifestyle, but I love them and I pray for them. But I think that was the thing that kind of really was very revealing, is that in church, there were people who were like, that were just done with me because I had the gall to speak up and say something. And that was the part that was very eye-opening, because I guess and it was also sad to see how many pastors in the community, and I know this statement's going to ruffle some feathers, but I'm going to say it, didn't speak up. Very few, because we would ask the pastors to speak up or to help us. It was very few.
I think not just in Hood County, because I've kind of witnessed that in Hood County as well. We've only been here 3 years. But I've witnessed it around the world. I have a friend right now who's working on the project, very intimately working on the project to confront the corruption in the Nigerian government that is leading to the slaughter of Christians.
Yes.
This guy's been making trips over there. He's made 16, 17 trips to Nigeria, and not just heard about it, been in the camps where the families that were run out of their homes are now living, worked with the teachers who are starting this process of life all over again. And the Nigerian government is still lying about it to the world. They're telling the world that's not happening. He's like, let me show you the video. In fact, let's go live. I'll walk you right into the camp. They're like, those camps don't exist. Okay, then what is this? And so the blatant, obvious, and unfortunately, he's been invited to speak, and he's spoken several times in large arenas of church gatherings, was invited to speak at one that the arena held like 40,000 people.
Wow.
And 3 days before he was supposed to be there to speak, the national government came down on that church leader, and there was some kind of financial incentive for that event not to happen and have him speak. And I was like, so the corruption level of the government, local or national or global, that can use a little money or a little leverage or a little revelation to force you to submit, means at some point your fealty is not to the kingdom.
Yes, absolutely.
Your loyalty is to your own fiefdom, or your loyalty is to your local government, or your loyalty is to your national government, or your loyalty is to the global elites, but it's not to Christ.
And that's where it's an interesting point you made, because when I told you I was face down on the floor and I'm like, okay, Lord, whatever, is I realized at that point, and I've said it before, it's like, am I going to fear man or am I going to fear God? And I fear God more than I do man. And I'm like, I'm going to do what's right. And that's really, I've been through too much to know that this life is short. I've had 2 different types of cancer. I've had breast cancer and thyroid cancer. And God was gracious and helped us catch them both early. And I probably have more years behind me than I do ahead. And really, my whole purpose for everything I do is, at the end of the day, I just want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. And that's how I live my life. And that's my motive for everything I do.
I had a vision when I was in my early 20s. I was walking along a path, and then suddenly I was elevated like on a cloud, or like a drone view. And I see this long line of people, like vanishing point in the distance, just the top of their tiny little heads. And as we came up behind the line, I saw prisoners in shackles and chains. Shackles around both ankles, shackles around both wrists, and chained to each other. And they're walking like they're headed into the prison. And as we flew a little further, my sense of justice was pricked, because I see that some of them are out of their chains and they're walking off over the hill. And then the further we went, there were more stepping over the chains because the people in the chains were gone. And I'm like, okay, why are they getting away? What were they guilty of, and why are they free now? And as I was continuing to move over this crowd, I see an angel walking beside them with blood in the tips of his wings that are dragging in the mud, and he's tears streaming down his face, and he's tapping them and telling them, you're free to go. And the angel on the cloud next to me says, he needs your help. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, they're all free to go. And as we got to the front of the line, they were walking off the cliff into the lake of fire. I think I was 22 or 23 years old when I had that vision. I didn't really get the concept of it. I mean, I get it, but I didn't realize the biblical magnitude of it. I was probably closer to 40 when I told a guy, I want to talk in a Bible study in our church about testimony, because the power of the story is so powerful. He said, well, what is a testimony? And I said, well, that's when you tell your story. He said, are you sure? And so I started digging into it. Dr. John Sperling and Dr. Rob Brewer really put me through the mill to make sure that I understood what that meant. And so what I found was, in the Ark of the Covenant, there's a testimony. And I went, what? Yeah, the testimony.
That's what I'm saying. What?
And
now
so
I'm intrigued.
The next step of that was, I said, well, people need to have a vision for their life. And he said, again, what is a vision? The Ark of the Covenant is actually called the testimony of God, which is a trip. And then you think about the bud, and you think about the staff, And you're like, what? Those are some weird things to have inside that box. I mean,
Right.
And then if you touch the box, you die. I mean, what?
Yes.
That doesn't make any sense to me, right? Why are we guarding that to that degree? That's a whole teaching all by itself. But when I started digging into vision, one of the things that I studied was that passage in Proverbs that everybody quotes. Without a vision, the people perish. Mm-hmm. And I started with the Blue Letter Bible and all the commentaries, and you'll notice I've got all the Matthew Henry commentaries in the library in there. As I started looking at perish, I was like, well, they don't succeed, they die. What do you mean perish? And it said they will run around in pure anarchy. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. So what does it mean, vision? And that's where the vision from 20 years ago came up. He said the vision isn't just that they have a plan to go forward, because Habakkuk 2:2 says, write the vision so the messenger can carry it. Well, that messenger is the evangelist. And the evangelist is the gospel being brought to the people. The battle is won, you're free to go. That's the message of the gospel of peace that we are supposed to prepare our feet with.
Yes.
It took me years to figure that out. But now I'm looking back at vision. I'm going, so what is the vision? Is it what the ideal scenario is? What is it you're trying to tell me? And when you dig into that word in Proverbs, he says, without a vision, the people perish. If they don't understand that hell is real and damnation is imminent, then they run around in full anarchy. Mm-hmm. That picture was saying if they don't see that cliff, if they don't see that eternal fire, then they will run around like maniacs.
Yes.
Doing whatever they want to because they feel convinced that there is no consequence coming. But the minute they get the picture of that consequence, they either choose to remain imprisoned or they leave for the cross. And I think when we look at society today, the burden, you mentioned before we started recording, the burden of being a missionary, the burden in the church has left.
Yes.
The heart to say, I see them walking off the cliff into the fire, is not what we hear in the pulpit.
No.
What we hear in the pulpit is, how do I build my local church? We visited probably a dozen churches after we left the mega church that we were at for 10 years. We taught there for 10 years. We were deeply involved for 10 years. There was a season we were homeless and we drove 90 minutes each way to get to that church to serve. We're not there anymore. But what we saw was a pattern that said this is how you grow a church from 50 to 50,000. And that pattern, we go visit churches now and we see that exact pattern. They're like, come back on XYZ day to go through XYZ program. And I'm like, I know that program. I helped write that program. I helped facilitate that program. And that program has nothing to do with the kingdom. It's all about being indoctrinated into your facility, into your fiefdom. And the only reason that exists, I'm not saying the process doesn't work. Every church that does it grows. But it doesn't bring the level of commitment that says I'm on my face and I'll sacrifice everything. If it means my family is ostracized, if it means my marriage is in trouble, if it means my financial gain is destroyed, bring it.
Right.
Because I'm going to stand for what's right because that's what God said.
Right. And there's so much of what you said that I could say so much about. I'm just trying to...
The show has no time limit.
It's so true. I think, too, like when we're talking about these issues... Like when you were talking about that vision that you had in your 20s, there needs to be, I think that's where the compassion comes from too, because Jesus had compassion, right? Mm-hmm. And so this election that I'm running right now is like, God has really laid heavy on my heart to have compassion for the people, even for my enemies, and to realize that they're lost. And so this time around, I've been more bold. And so I knock doors. That's part of what I do is block walk. And everyone laughs. Because it's one of my strong points, because I love people, I really do. And people tell you stuff when you knock on their door. So this election, I've run into people who, I can't tell you how many people have just been diagnosed with cancer, or they have a loved one who's terminal, or their loved one has just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, or one man Literally, I'm standing in his garage and his house is for sale, and he's like, I have to sell everything because my wife is divorcing me, and breaks down in tears. And to really be, like you said, an evangelist, and at that moment in time to be bold enough to say, can I pray with you?
Yeah.
And so it's an opportunity I feel like God has given me this time, because I've been involved in politics for 12 years, just about knocking doors for other candidates long before I was a candidate, to really not just give them a conservative voter guide, but give them Jesus. Yeah. And to be like, I'm going to pray for you, and to stand there and take, they say in block walking, get in and get out because you have to hit all the voters. And I don't really feel that way all the time. Sometimes I feel like God has different ideas. He has divine appointments. And so I spend time with them. This is
just an excuse to knock on the door.
It is. I've sat with elderly people who've lost their loved one, and they're lonely. They're so lonely. And they just need to know and hear that they matter. I was talking about mission trips when we went to Thailand and even Paraguay. Our culture, the way we treat elderly is so wrong. They are honored in the Asian culture. They are honored in the in Paraguay as well. And we, in America, and the Bible even talks about age, gray hair is, it's splendor, and how that's where wisdom comes from, and how we're supposed to honor our elders. And so that's something else I see when I knock on doors, how these older people are just alone. And it feels like nobody cares. And so just to have that moment to sit with them. And I think, because, I was really out of politics after school board. I'm like, I'm done. And so there's that saying where, we make plans and God laughs, right? Because he has different plans for us, and boy, does he. And so here I am again running for district clerk. But I see now, even as district clerk, people will come up when there's jury, and they'll bring excuses. So many people being diagnosed with cancer, horrible things, a lady who lost her son. And to be able to grab their hand and say, hey, I'm a cancer survivor, there's hope, I'm praying for you. And even we had a gentleman who called once and said, my wife was just diagnosed with cancer, can I get out of jury duty? And of course I said yes. But I felt this prodding to be bold and say, I'm going to give you my phone number, give it to her. I'm a cancer survivor. To make a long story short, we usually meet once a month. We haven't because of the election, but that'll be over soon, thank God. And they ended up coming to church and both accepted Jesus as their Savior, and I have a relationship with her, and I check in with her because I understand the mental part of going through cancer, and I wanted to be proactive and really help her to understand how she needed to protect her mind from the fear that the devil comes at us with. And so now I look back, because I'm like, district clerk, I'm like, really, God? Like, how am I gonna make a difference for you with that? But I really have been able to, and even with my clerks, we sit and we pray, and they know that when things happen in their lives, they know they can come to me, and they know I'm gonna pray for them. They know that I'm genuine. And so I think it's really about, we really can take Jesus anywhere we go. And so, but he's really teaching me to have compassion for my enemies too, like for the people who don't like me. I had one man knocking doors, just, I hate you, I hate you. He couldn't say it enough times. But to walk away and say, God bless you, but to not say it in a snarky way, but to say it in a meaningful way.
And that's got to be in your heart to begin with.
It does, and I think that's how this community starts to heal. This community, if you've probably noticed already, is very divided, but to just not...
Well, and it's funny that the ones that, from my perspective, are exacerbating the division are also the ones that are yelling, we should have unity for unity's sake.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm like, so what you're saying is, let's all get together and disagree.
Why can't we disagree and still be kind to one another?
Okay, so you used a word twice now, enemy.
Yes.
Okay. Scripture says, love your enemies. It's a profound thing. I heard Dr. Jordan Peterson say one time, the difference philosophically between an enemy and an opponent is that you can go at an opponent with everything you have to defeat them and walk away and love them. That's why you see guys in the UFC ring. I mean, they're like, I am going to break your arm. I've got this arm bar. I've got my leg over your neck. You're going to submit or you're going to die, right? And then get up and hug each other and go have dinner together. And you're like, that's as close to Mortal Kombat as you can get.
Yes.
And yet to have that human regard to love one another. And what I don't see, and it's a mindset thing, it's like the prophets at Mount Carmel. It's what I can only imagine looked like for the spirit that moved through along the river Nile in Egypt, when God said, all right, I'm done. I've given you all, this is all the negotiation. But he didn't draw the line in the sand, he drew it on the doorframe.
Right.
And what I find is our enemies, our opponents, they don't want to win the battle and then be friends.
No.
They want to utterly annihilate and destroy.
Oh, yes.
I can only imagine if we could superimpose human emotions on that spirit that came to destroy, what he felt like when he came to a door with the blood over it and went, oh, not here? Because that's the one I was coming to destroy. But then at the same time, that was the spirit moving. That spirit of death was on assignment by an almighty God who said, do what you do, but know your limits.
Well, and it leads to the question, too, like with some of what I was calling my enemy. You know, in the Bible, it talks about how some men are given over to the depravity of their mind. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is actually a question for you, so maybe you can help teach me, but I feel like some of these people have been given over to the depravity of their mind. And can we, as Christians, can we ever have a real relationship with people like that? That's a question I ask myself that I don't have the answer for. I continue to pray for them.
There's a story of a ship at sea, and you maybe have heard the story. I'm going to take it a little bit further than what's normally taught, even in the pulpit. Ship is at sea, and he says, I see your light off my starboard bow. You need to change course. And the other light comes back and says, I'm not changing course. A little arrogance in the voice. And the captain says, you don't understand, I am Admiral so-and-so, Nimitz-class destroyer. I'm being followed by 25 other naval warships. We will blast you out of the water. They will not find the pieces. The other light comes back and says, I'm not changing course. He said, this is your last warning. You are off my starboard bow. You are entirely too close. You are coming too fast. Change your course. Do it now, or you will be destroyed. The other light says, I am a lighthouse. I cannot change course. But I'm here to let you know there's a big rock reef right in front of you, and if you don't change course, you are going to be destroyed by your own hand. And I realize when people use that from the pulpit, what they're trying to say is, God doesn't change course, you're going to collide. There's a great truth to that. Here's the secondary truth that most of them stop at. When my son was a teenager, he's bigger than me, has been since he was 16, 17 years old, playing football, driving the car to school, he's a man, right? And he and mom share a car at that time, and he's smoking in the car. And I said, why are you smoking in the car? You know your mother's deathly allergic to it. Stop doing that. And he's like, I didn't smoke in the car. And so I opened my hand with 6 cigarette butts that I had just pulled out of the door jamb between the seat and the door. And I punched him right in his chest. And I hit him so hard it took his breath away. He stumbled back. His girlfriend came out of the room. She's like, what just happened? And I said, he lied to me. He lied to my face. That was the collision. He found the rock reef. Fast forward 10 years. He's a dad. He's got a family to take care of. And at midnight, he calls me. He's like, is today trash day or is it yesterday? Did I miss it? Right? This is the same kid. That was a hard confrontation, but here's what I've told my kids all along, and this is what I believe is the biblical counsel even for the depraved mind. Now, there are those who take that depraved mind and go to Hebrews 6:4 and say there is no redemption for them. They can never be forgiven and come back. That's a big theological mess that I'm not sure that I'm qualified to get into, but we can debate it for those who feel like they're qualified to debate it. What I do know, though, is that Christ said, on the solid rock I stand. I am the rock. Don't build your house on the sand, because the sand's going to move every time the waves do. Build your house on the rock. So my job as the lighthouse isn't just to stand here for the purpose of the collision that's coming. It's also to know that when you do change course and you find yourself half a mile out at sea and you're like, I'm lost, I can say, you know what you need to know about the lighthouse? It never moved.
Right.
It didn't move to avoid the collision with you. It didn't move when imminent disaster came, and it didn't move now. And if you have now recognized I'm lost and I need my way back, look up. The lighthouse still hasn't moved. We had the blessing last July, after several, as friendly as we could make them, conversations with what I could only say at the time were New Age in-laws. We sat down with them for breakfast. He's 84. He's had several strokes and stents and et cetera, et cetera. And we sat down with them at breakfast, and he said, I just want you to know, last Christmas we gave our life to Jesus. And I'm like, yes.
That's awesome.
But we didn't try to force conversion on them. We didn't try to make them see the world our way. We just stood our ground where we are. I had a mother-in-law that told me straight up, I don't know why my daughter married you. I hate you. I wish you weren't in my life. And in my house, I'm the queen bee. It took 11 years for that woman to look me in the eye and go, I don't know why my daughter loves you, but obviously she does, and all those kids do, and I give you permission to be you. I was like, it only took 11 years. But in light of eternity, to endure that relationship. And I think that's the hard thing. I see people who are, they call themselves evangelists at heart, and what they mean by that is, I will preach to a tree stump. And we saw a homeless guy, I presume he's homeless, shorts down around his middle of his thighs, drawers looked like they hadn't been washed in months, and maybe he hadn't even had a proper place to use the bathroom. Dirty, hair's a mess, beard's a mess. He's holding a sign that says, I want help. And I have to be honest and say, while I'm compassionate, I'm also a little bit, I don't know, reticent to give money to people that are physically capable and perhaps mentally challenged or unwilling to work.
Right.
And so I'm not going to yank money out of my pocket and give it to them right there. What I will say is, I've got a full library of books that if you read any one of them will probably redirect the path of your life if you're willing to change. If you're not willing to change, there's not any hope for you. And that's not my place. But I do know people who have run up right there, right on that street corner, got out of their car and went, do you know Jesus? Do you have Jesus in your life? Are you going to hell when you die this week?
He needs a bath first and some food probably.
And so I have the challenge of, how do we meet their needs? How do we stand the ground?
Yes.
But I also run across those many people that the first time we meet, it seems like massive conflict. Yeah, there's rocks there.
Yes, yes.
But when you avoid the rocks and you sustain a little longer, and then you realize, there was a place that I realized that conflict was necessary, and now I'm just lost. Look up, because I'm in the same place that I have been for almost 50 years of my life, and I'm not moving. Does that mean that I can't stand corrected? No, I absolutely stand corrected. And I love it when I have a conversation with somebody and I come in with a strong belief and they're like, but you're wrong and here's why. Awesome. I want to be correct.
I tell my kids all the time, I said, the only thing I'm absolutely positive of is that I know absolutely nothing. Well, I mean, that's a stretch. I know maybe this much, but like, I know that I'm not always right. You know, that there's, till the day I die, I'll be learning. I'll be learning.
We all should be. Simon Sinek and Jordan Peterson had a great conversation, and Simon Sinek said, I have strong opinions loosely held. And I thought, that is brilliant.
That is a good statement.
That's an endeavor, right?
Yes, yes, it is.
I believe what I believe. I know why I believe what I believe. But if there's better evidence, I want it.
Yes, that's so true. Because I think about, 20 years ago, what I believed then is different than what I believe now. And it's just forever changing. And then when we started doing mission trips and started traveling, outside of the United States, a lot of what I believed was challenged too.
Yeah.
So it does. It is ever changing.
I was listening to a guy on I think it was a Facebook reel this morning. And he said, I'm standing in the streets of Kazakhstan and asking people, do you want to come to America? And they're like, why? And he said, what I realize here is the streets are clean, the families are intact, the conversations are solid, and all these things that we're fighting over in the streets in America, what they say is the West is distracted.
We are.
And my question for them would be, that's an awesome statement, and I believe it, and I agree, but distracted from what?
Well,
I think Jesus answers that question. But.
Oh, he does. He does. But I feel like, too, like when we went to Paraguay, for example, you know, we think, when we went over there, I remember, I'll never forget, standing in this lady's house, which was it was a dirt floor and like tree branches for a roof, and thinking to myself, this is the most peaceful place I've ever been in my entire life. And what I noticed when I was over there, they don't have half the material things that we do, but they were very receptive to Jesus and you know, very, very receptive, but they're so family orientated, and they spend all day together, working together, and they're, you know, they have their animals or their garden or whatever. And I'll never forget just standing in the middle of poverty in South America and thinking, this is the most peaceful place I've ever been, because they're not in a hurry. They're not in a rush like we are. And the same thing when we went to Thailand. It's a little bit busier over there, but one thing we noticed, we were there for 11 days and everybody's grateful. It's a lot of this, you know, we were doing a lot of that. But, and we didn't realize it until we were on the plane. It was from LA back to Dallas. And we heard an American complain. And my son looks at me and he's like, Mom, that's so weird to hear someone complaining. I'm like, you're right, it is, because in the 11 days, and we were in the poverty-stricken area of Thailand, we didn't hear one of those people complain. And then my daughter said, she goes, you know, it's easier to be around the natives of whatever country it is than it is the Americans sometimes that we came with.
Yeah.
Because they complain, but they're just so grateful, and they're so, like I said before, they honor the elders, you know, and their family, and it's all about family. A lot of times the whole family lives together in the same house, whereas here it's like when our parents get old, we stick them, not to say it's bad, because sometimes you have to, because sometimes they may need skilled nursing care.
Yeah, the level of care that you can provide.
Yes, that you can't provide. But we're such in a hurry to just put our parents away. Not all of us, but you know, it's the American way.
The same thing with the young people. I mean, they're like, you're 18, it's time for you to move on, you know, get a life, get a job, get a car. We've got a son with a young son. Their newest baby is special needs. And it takes a lot to care for a child who has special issues. He's a preemie. He's 8 months and barely 15 pounds. I mean, I can still hold him in one hand. He's a tiny little guy at 8 months old. We've got twins on the other side. Our daughter's twins are probably pushing 25, 30 pounds. They're only 5 months older than him. It's crazy, the difference. But that son still lives at home. People are like, he's a grown man. Why don't you kick him out? I'm like, and then what? Send him a check every month because they can't make their bills, because the cost of living is so high,
right?
Because they need help, because they have to pay for special childcare, because you know they got two kids at home. And what would be the point of that? Right now, if mom's overwhelmed and it's midnight, she walks in and she's like, here, take the baby for a minute.
Yes.
And it's not travel down the street. And I think our society has lost a lot of that.
Yes.
And part of that's the compassion. Part of that is the selfishness and self-focused. And I teach about the attitude of entitlement. I also believe the attitude of entitlement is a spirit. Mm-hmm. And it's an otherworldly spirit that doesn't do good for us. Let's go back to your question. I think one of the challenges we see, both in the church and in the home, is that it's so easy to dismiss and abandon what doesn't suit us well. And many believers and many pastors, they're focused on growing that little fiefdom. You know, how do I get more attendees in my church? How do I get more attendees who are, for lack of a better term, indoctrinated in the process and the growth of our church, et cetera, et cetera. Here's what we believe. This is what we do. People like us do things like this, et cetera, et cetera. That's awesome. But are they growing the kind of people that will be fearless circa 1930?
Right.
Are they growing the kind of people who would nail the 95 Thesis to the door?
Or maybe the kind of people who would, during World War II, help hide the Jews. Like one of my biggest heroes, Corrie ten Boom.
Yeah.
And then, had to go to a concentration camp, and I think she lost her sister and her mom and her dad.
There's a great movie called The Hiding Place.
Yes, I've seen it more than once.
Have you seen The Return to the Hiding Place?
No.
So The Return to the Hiding Place was produced by a friend of mine, Dr. Peter Spencer. And Peter was talking about the real woman who was known as Corrie ten Boom. And in a lecture, Dr. Peter Spencer has been an apologist at the highest level for years and years and years. And so in a lecture, he's talking about her and hiding the Jews and et cetera, et cetera. And as he says this, a guy in the audience walks up like it's Q&A time, walks up to stage, security stopping him, and Dr. Peter Spencer's like, "Are you okay?" He said, "When you speak of, will you do me a favor and just speak kindly of my friend?" He's like, "Dude, you say that like you know her."
He did, didn't he?
Tears streaming down his face. He said, "I was the Jew, the first Jew hidden in that wall. I put those bricks there myself." And he was like, "Wait a minute. I mean, you got to back up for a minute."
Oh,
and go,
yeah.
This is not a mythical story. This is
No.
not a fable built.
No.
These are real people with real lives. And so The Return to the Hiding Place is Peter Spencer's movie about, and his daughter played a role in it. And at one point, they're like, she has to run through this field for this particular scene, and she's already lost one shoe. We need to buy other shoes that are kind of the period, of the era, so we don't mess up the costume. And they literally go to a secondhand store, buy the shoes, they put them on her, she runs the scene, the shoe gets stuck in the mud again. And so they go to pull the shoe out, and they realize inside the shoe is a name. And it's that woman's name.
Wow.
The woman that she's playing the role of in the movie, the woman who started the whole thing. And you're like, what are the odds of that?
Wow, that's
And there
God.
were tons and tons of those little stories and revelations. One of them was, there's a scene where the Nazis come in and they're looking for the weapon. They're like, "We know you have a gun in here. You're not allowed to have guns. You're a Jew." And they turn over everything in the house and pull up 4 panels. Can't find the gun. And in the scene, the guy's going through the library, pulling things off the shelf. And then somebody says, "I found the floor panel." He stops where he's at, turns to the floor panel, pulls it up, and then they get called away. The next book on that shelf was a Bible.
Wow.
So when the scene comes through and they're previewing it with all the people who have given them history, one of the guys goes, "How did you know that?" He said, "Know what?" He said, "The Bible." Torah, actually. He said, "How did you know that?" And he's like, it fit the scene. He's like, "No, that's the true story. That's my Torah. That's my house. The depiction of this scene. I took the gun out of the floorboard and I hid it behind the Torah on
Wow.
the bookshelf." And they stopped. Only God, right?
Yes.
Last one, true story. There was a conversation between the man who was involved in this, who got sent off to concentration camp and the whole thing, and he would write letters to her on toilet tissue and smuggle them out. And so after they finished the film, they're doing the previews. Dr. Spencer is sitting there with his daughter and, his historic presenters, and a guy walks up and he's like, "So how did you come to the conclusion that they were going to smuggle love stories out in toilet tissue?" He's like, it was a second or third hand story. It was a myth, but it worked really, really well. And the guy puts a shoebox on the table full of toilet tissue with love notes. And you're like, there's no way. How do you artistically, historically pull that together? In the same way that you take 66 different books with 50 different authors over generations of time, and you come to the same conclusion. Mm-hmm. And the challenge that we have is people are so vehemently opposed to that truth.
Yes.
That they will risk life, limb, and relationship to oppose that truth with nothing to gain from doing it except opposing that truth. It's like we paint the door jamb, we draw the line in the sand, and that becomes their target zone.
Yes.
Now I know where to come after you. I know where the line is. I know where you're standing. Great. I'm still a lighthouse. Mm-hmm. Come on.
Not going to move.
I think that's the challenge that our pastors today struggle with.
Yes. Going back to Corrie ten Boom for a minute, I was just thinking about something as you were talking too, and we were talking about enemies versus opponents.
Yeah.
I think that's why she's, when people say, if you could meet anyone ever, in your life, like I told you, she's my hero, and that's who I would want to meet. And I really believe it's because she had the ability to forgive.
Yes.
That incredible ability to forgive the Nazis, to be gentle with them. And that was the legacy. Yeah. And I just always, that's why, to me, she's my hero, because that is not an easy thing to do. When I talk about, or I think about things that have been done to me, they're nothing in comparison to what she went through.
Or what he went through on the cross.
Exactly. And he still I have a friend. So when all of this library stuff happened, I had a friend who was an artist, and he drew with pencil. And he, the day I was going into court, and this is a God thing, the day I'm getting ready to go into court to testify, he hands me a rolled up, it was his artwork. And it was a picture of Jesus, a pencil sketch with the crown of thorns on his head. And at the bottom it says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." And he handed that to me before I walked in there. He's since passed away, but we got that framed, and it hangs in our house. And I think it hangs in our house as a reminder.
I think the hard thing for believers today is to imagine doing something that would provoke such resistance that forgiveness would be required. The difference between nice and kind, right? What idiot decided to sue the guy who caught their baby falling from a 3-story window because his ribs were broken? You're like, he's alive.
Right.
He
that's
would have
been dead.
As suing a firefighter for doing CPR.
Yes.
And yet that act that brought pain was kindness. Was it nice? Well, no, it brought pain. Was it kind? Absolutely. And I think we've so blurred that line, as we have with so many other definitions, that to be nice or to be kind is what the Christian is expected to do, even at their own demise, even at their own peril, even when the line has been crossed.
Right.
That's not Christ-like. I had a pastor tell me one time, he's like, well, you have to be more nice, you have to be more kind, you can't say things like that, you can't push back on people, that's just not the Christian thing to do. And I said, so what you're telling me is that when Jesus walked into the temple, and he said, that's not what this place is for,
and he
drove the animals out, and he flipped over the tables, do you think he was being nice? You think he was being, oh, I'm so sorry, you have to leave now. No, He was like, get out, you can't do this in my Father's house. And he said, but that's not Christ-like. I'm like, so you're more Christ-like than Jesus is what you're telling me. Okay, right. I get it. That conversation didn't end well. I think the challenge is we've so allowed the world to define the expectation of Christian that it's impossible to be a Christian.
Yeah, we let the left define our language that we use too.
What is a family? What is a woman?
Have you watched the documentary by Matt?
Walsh?
What is a woman?
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
Yeah, it's really good.
I want to make a T-shirt that just says, "What is a woman?" on the front, and on the back it'll say, "Yo, mama."
Yes.
It doesn't get any more true than that.
That is, yeah.
It would offend
pretty
people,
simple.
But it's a really basic fact. But when we allow them to redefine, what does it mean to be a family? What does it mean to be a husband, a wife, a brother, a sister? What does it mean to be a man or a woman? And now they've moved to the place of what does it mean to be a Christian? Let me tell you what it means to be a Christian.
When they don't know the first thing.
And they don't care. They just want you to live up to the expectation they have of you.
And they just want to control the narrative and the language.
So our other show is a political show where we only focus on politics, and the name of the show is Lead the Narrative. Because if we don't lead the narrative, we'll lose the nation.
That's right.
But how do we lead the narrative? One little story at a time. And so that's what we help people to do, is to understand the story you're telling in the mirror so that you're ready to tell the story in the media. I've been working with a client recently that hired me over a year ago, and I fired them. I was like, I'm not going to let you renew because the amicability of understanding what I do for you is not there, which means now you're working strictly on price, and I'm not game for that. They hired me back recently, and they're like, I've been put under pressure. I have to do X, Y, Z in a short amount of time. And I said, okay. we had a session with that very narrow focus and that very narrow time window. And at the end of the session, the spouse was there through the entire session. But at the end of the session, I said, you got to understand that every little story you tell, from your brand message to your elevator pitch to your sales pitch to how you navigate and negotiate with a new client, every one of those stories redefines the culture of your business.
Yes.
And she was like, really? I said, yeah, that's why you have to be on board with his story. And that's why he has to be on board with your story. Because if you don't have unison in that, then you're going to have a problem later on. So the last time I talked to him, he's like, I didn't realize how differently approachable she was from me. How do you help me fix that? I said, well, you're going to have to hear some tough answers first. You're going to have to be willing to make some changes in you. Part of it is your nature. Part of it is your demeanor, but a large part of it's choice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, back to the very first question, right? How did you end up in politics? Well, because you'd already made a choice. That's the challenge that many of our leaders have today, is that their choices change in the moment, tossed about by the wind. They haven't made a decision already. A lot of people have made a decision to make a commitment for Christ, but they have not made a commitment to that decision, that commitment level that says, regardless what comes, I'm standing right here.
That's a rock.
It may be a storm. It may be a hurricane. It may be a wildland fire that burns all the way to the coast. Mm-hmm. It may be a battleship that comes at me, but I can't move because I'm found on this rock and there is no other place for me. That's a hard decision to make. And obviously, as you've experienced, there's a lot of price to pay for that.
There is, because it has to become, like you said, your foundation. And so, you did the precinct chair thing for 5 years, and then I found out that the Democrats were running all of our elections here as election judges and clerks, and so became vice chair of elections for the Republican Party and cleaned that up, and then took a year off to fight breast cancer. And God put it on my heart to run for school board. And I argued with him over that. And I was like, I am a homeschool mama at the time. And I'm like, there is no way. I'm like, this is insane. And so in my prayer time, God was like, I'm not asking you to make sense out of it. It was that word again. Are you going to be obedient? It's always that word, obedience, obedience. It's like, if I would have a word for my life, it would be obedience. Yes, I'm going to be obedient. And so I ran. And I won, much to my surprise. I had 2 opponents and I won. And boy, those were the 3 hardest years of my life, because I was met with resistance, and I stood firm on my foundation, and I made a lot of enemies because, we would vote on curriculum, and right there in their mission statement, there would be DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusiveness. And I'm like, nope, I'm not voting for it. And I would say exactly why, and I'd read the mission statement. And thankfully God gave me a help. Somebody else ran, and they were a conservative Christian, and so I was on the board 1 year by myself, only conservative, and then they'll tell you, oh, the board is conservative.
By what standard?
Exactly, they define conservative differently than I do. Yeah. And so I just counted down the days until, I was done. But had it not been, the whole thing was always, my beliefs and my foundation are not for sale. They're not up for discussion. All of my decisions are based in what I believe biblically, and I'm not going to sway from that. And so I've made a lot of enemies because of that, because I won't sway and I won't sell out.
So you mentioned earlier that people that sat next to you at church gave you a hard time, some even abandoned you. Mm-hmm. Some on a larger scale might ask the question, what made you feel like you needed to insert yourself in this issue in the first place?
The book issue with my daughter?
School board.
Oh, school board?
Precinct chair.
Because I started to realize that I was being apathetic, and I thought I lived in this conservative town, and as we were peeling back the layers, I'm like, it wasn't conservative, it wasn't Christian, it was like a mask that people wore. I'm a Republican conservative, but it was fake. It was like, if you remove the mask, that's not at all what was there. And so I felt this sense of urgency for our children, for our community, and saw a need that needed to be filled, and I wanted to learn more about politics, so got involved as a precinct chair, which helped get good conservative Christians elected to office, but also would go to the Republican state conventions, which help form what the Republican Party believes, which is so important because it affects, legislation.
Well, and it changes language, which changes
yes.
policy, which changes behavior.
Yes, which controls the narrative that comes from the Republican Party. So got involved in that, and then I saw this need for a school board because, as with the books, there was more indoctrination than there was education. And it became a bigger picture than just my family and my kids. Yeah, my kids were homeschooled. I felt like they were safe. But what about all the other kids in the community? Kids who maybe don't have two parents at home or don't have parents who care.
They're being raised by their grandparents.
Right.
Yeah.
That they deserve the same thing that my kids have. They deserve to be educated and not indoctrinated. And I would, when I was on the school board, I would start going to one of the middle schools here and just monitor during lunchtime and walking around and getting to know the kids, and especially sitting with the kids who were all alone, who just didn't have anybody, and trying to build relationships with them to let them know. I'll never forget one of the kids. He was always in trouble, and sat down one day. We were sitting outside because it was warm at lunchtime, and I was like, God has a purpose for your life, because he would always tell me all the bad stuff he did, and I was never shaken by the bad stuff he did. And I said, you're a really smart kid, and I said, God has a purpose. And his eyes lit up and he stopped and he said, you think God loves me? And I'm like, absolutely, I know he does, but I've done all these bad things. And I said, so what? He most definitely, and I don't know whatever happened to that kid. I hope that the seeds that I planted grew. All I could do was plant those seeds. Yeah. And if the administration knew what I was doing, and if this is broadcast, they'll know, but who cares? I don't care. I probably would have been in trouble. But that's what he needed. He needed to hear that there was hope, and it didn't matter how many mistakes he had made, that God loved him.
I think there are a lot of people, I think of the golf ball collectors, the guys that drive around on the golf cart and pick up all the golf balls that have been knocked all over the park. And I think there are a lot of people who think evangelism is like that when they're looking for the starfish on the beach. That you can just harvest them by the dozen. Where the little boy says, the old man says, well, why do you throw that one back in? I mean, look at all of them. You can't save them all. And he's like, I can't save them all. And he's like, well, why does it matter? Well, it mattered to that one. And it mattered to that one. And we fiefdoms build churches like the golf ball collector, with little concern for what condition they are in when they get inside the tumbler, so to speak. And then we throw them all in the washer together, and they all come out and get smacked across the ground again. And so that life cycle, and you see it demonstrated in their lives. Well, I've been in church all my life. Yeah, but you haven't met Jesus yet.
Right, like really met Jesus.
Yeah. I know you know what the church is, denominationally, functionality, what the roles and responsibilities are if you're an usher or you're a deacon or you're the pastor or you're the donut guy, whatever. I know you get all that, but have you met the King? Right,
the relationship. It's the relationship versus religion.
And I think that is part of, it's part of the enemy's plan, watering down the effectiveness of the church. God told me probably 25 years ago, no, it hadn't been that long, 15 years ago. He said, if you find yourself fighting the Muslims on the streets of America, it's because you didn't fight for them in the throne room long enough. And there are a lot of people who are just now going, wait, they believe that? You're like, well, yeah, they believed that for over 1,400 years. And everywhere they've been, they're like the sheep in the old cartoons where they just go over the mountains and they destroy everything and they leave nothing in their wake. That's been the history of the Muslim faith around the world. It is not a religion. It is a political system.
Right, and they partner with the communists.
Well, it's my opinion that the Muslim philosophy sees the Stalinistic ideology as useful idiots.
Absolutely. I agree.
Which is ironic because the Stalinistic ideology sees the Muslims as useful. They're just, we'll use them to get our job done.
And they don't even...
Both of you are doing the same thing.
It always, they don't even mesh because, correct me if I'm wrong, but Muslims, as far as homosexuality goes, they kill them. And then
but
the
they can lie to you about that until they get done with
exactly,
you.
That's true.
Yes,
that's true.
They'll use you.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't think the communist society, if you will, polite communist elite society, I don't think they care one way or another how you destroy yourself, as long
No,
as you do. You can starve to death, you can be an alcoholic, you can shoot each other in the streets, stab each other with pitchforks. I don't care. That's why there are hundreds of millions of people dead in the wake of communism. But there are as many people dead in the wake of Islamic movement. Now, I have friends who are Muslim. They fled Afghanistan when the Taliban came in. And they're like, we are not that kind of Muslim. And my prediction is that by Easter, you'll see Sharia law declared in Manhattan as a result of Mamdani.
Yeah.
But if you follow the train far enough back, Mamdani's mother had a relationship with the Clintons and the Epsteins. And with the WEF. And
Not
so
surprised.
they are global domination mindset to begin with, and they see everybody else as in the way of their reducing the population until the only ones that are left are the best.
Right.
Which is not unlike
Adolf Hitler. Interesting. Very interesting.
So why would someone else consider getting involved in politics as an expression of their faith?
Because I believe that we are not here for our purpose. We are here to glorify God. And I truly believe that's why we were created. And I believe that we all have a purpose. And I believe that we need to be busy about asking what God's purpose is for our life. We are, especially as Americans, we are not here to be comfortable. And I'm sorry, live the American dream. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. But we are here.
Kingdom assignment and American dream are not the same thing.
Right, right. We are here on assignment. And, you know, in the Bible, I'm not going to try to quote it, but you can probably quote it for me. You know, if good people don't get involved, we will be ruled by evil people. And I know that's a verse in the Bible. I'm terrible at knowing.
It's also Dante, you know, when good people do nothing.
Yeah. And so we have a responsibility to our children and the generations that come after to be involved. And, you know, and if we want to be that light on the hill, it doesn't just happen by inaction. It happens by getting involved. And I was the last person. I was afraid of my own voice, really. When I was back in grade school, I mean, the most tormenting thing and scariest thing to me was for the teacher to call on me, because I just wanted to hide. And I really am an introvert. I really am. But I do love people. I love them. I see the sense of urgency. I see just how people need to know the truth and how people need to know the love of Jesus. And we can sit here and I think some people like to complain about the state of politics in their community or in their country. But why don't all that energy they put into complaining, why not put that energy into making a difference in your own backyard? Maybe we can't affect politics at the federal level, but we can make a difference in our own backyard. And we can make, you know, when you were talking about the churches, it's like, why can't the church be me and you? And when people run into us, that's where they meet Jesus. That's the way it should be. They should be meeting Jesus.
Ecclesia by Ed Soloso?
No.
You've heard the phrase ecclesia,
Yes.
or ecclesia.
Yes.
What's the teaching that you've heard on that word? What does it mean?
To be honest with you, you're going way, way back, and I don't remember, so you need to...
So most people would say ecclesia is the church, right? It's not the building, it's the people. When I heard Ed Silvoso and then Lance Wallnau and then others kind of teach around this, even Jordan Peterson, who's not a Christian but studies the word, probably better than most Christians.
Yes.
Many pastors. They talked about the word ecclesia, and they said you have to understand this word in its timely context, not just in its vernacular context. So in its timely context, in the day when Rome existed as the world empire, Rome would send soldiers to go take over a new land, kind of like the envoys that went to Greenland and said, by the way, we're coming, right? But if as an American, like when I was in the Congo with my blue passport, people would look at me and go, oh, holding a blue passport. They treat you differently because you're holding a blue passport when you travel to other places. And I had a guy snatch my passport and run off with it. And I was French-speaking nation. I don't know what to do. I don't know who he is. I don't know what he's running, but he's in full military garb with an automatic weapon. I'm not going to tackle him and take it back.
Right.
That's a different story. Ecclesia, though, is like that blue passport. So when Caesar would send Roman soldiers to another place, he's like, look, if one comes to visit, he might be on vacation. But if 2 or 3 show up, that's an envoy. Don't jack with them, because they come not just as 3 Roman soldiers or representatives. They are my Congress. They are meeting there on my behalf, and they have the full weight, authority, and power of Caesar behind them. You mess with them, you mess with me. When Jesus said, this is my church, this is my ecclesia, this is my ecclesia, this is my envoy, these are my ambassadors, you mess with them, you mess with Dad. Boy, that changes things. That's why he said, if they say something, it has the full weight and authority of me. When Christine Ohm speaks, she speaks on behalf of the president. If she says something that's untoward, inappropriate, perhaps as Pam Bondi or someone else has done, to say something that disagrees with the final authority in that chain of command, that's a problem. But what Christ said is, when they gather in my name and they speak on my behalf, they have the full weight and authority of the King of Kings. And that's why the ecclesia, not the fiefdom we know as the modern church,
Right.
but the body of Christ, unified under that assignment, following the commandment, being obedient. If they walk into a place where there are demons, it's not even a conversation. The demons are like, crap, we got to go, right? And they know that without even, because they know you by your presence.
Right.
They know you by your love, that you carry that into the room. And when you see a genuine believer, they don't have to tell you they're a Christian.
No, you can tell.
You don't have to have a cross around your neck. You don't have to have a halo on your head. You don't have to have Pastor so-and-so on your name badge. When you walk in a room where there's violence and you're not scared, when you walk in a room where there's hatred and you love, when you walk into a room where there's curiosity and fear and you're the one that they look to for answers, that is the ecclesia. That is, and that's what we're called to do. And I just don't see many people sold out to that, to walk up and say, how can I pray for you? I'll put it like this. And I know we've only got a few minutes left of recording time, but I was given an assignment, and honestly, we've done an abysmal job of fulfilling it so far. But the assignment was to ask as many people as you can one question with one follow-on. The objective was that by the end of 2025, we would have 5,000 of those. So far, we have about 600. But when we asked this question in public, we started doing it in places where Christians gather, Christian conferences. The first one, I think there were 300 or 400 Christian counselors gathered to enhance their training, continuing education credits, right? I mean, these are not just people who think about Jesus. These are people who teach other people to have a better relationship with Jesus. And we asked this question. And we put up a camera and we put a big banner behind them. We're like, just answer the question on camera so we can share it around the world. I don't care if you take 90 seconds or 9 minutes, whatever that answer boils up in you. We went from there to another evangelistic conference. We went from there to a modern church conference. And in each of those, less than 10% of the people we approached and said, will you answer this question, would answer the question on camera.
What's the question?
Who is Jesus to you, and why should I care?
Oh. Well, I would be here a long time if I were to tell you who Jesus is to me.
I had people look at me with tears in their eyes and go, I haven't figured that out myself. And I'm like, you're a Christian counselor, and you're not sure who the person of Jesus Christ is to you?
He's my best friend.
It's a good answer.
That's my quick answer.
I've heard people say he's my everything. I had one tell me, your Jesus, my Jesus, same guy. Difference is you believe he got away, or you believe he died on the cross, and I believe he got away. It was never crucified.
Wow.
I'm like, okay. One guy said, he's the SOB who killed my daughter with leukemia. Or there's a whole spectrum of answers of how people view Jesus. But that was the question Jesus asked to Peter, who am I to you? And if you go through a church today and ask that question, you will not get the same answer that Peter gave.
I think about it too, and to me it's like he's the air that I breathe. He's the reason I breathe. He's the reason I wake up in the morning. He's the reason I do everything I do.
Do you remember what Peter said?
Is that the one who? I think so.
You are the Christ, the only Son of a living God. And he said, that was not given to you by man. That's a revelation from God. And upon that rock, I'll build my church. On that statement of faith, on that revelation, ecclesia. And that's why we've lost the power. Because most people who attend a church don't know Jesus like that. And that's why we've lost the ability to walk with authority into a room. You hear it all the time. We watch a lot of cop videos. It's kind of funny. But the most common phrase is, do you know who my father is? And I saw one wise guy go, what, your mom didn't tell you? I'm like, oh, that's harsh.
That is harsh.
But it's more harsh to think that your earthly father has the authority to get you out of your stupidity. Mm-hmm. When the heavenly Father has already paid the price to do it.
Yep.
I mean, every mistake you've made, like you said of the kid, I've done so many bad things, how could God even love me? Oh, he didn't just love you. He killed his son to pay the price for your stupidity.
Exactly.
That's a harsh reality. But our churchianity people don't get that. And so they don't have the authority or the power to walk into somebody's life who's struggling with a sexual identity crisis or struggling with a political identity crisis or a family identity or their own identity crisis and say, one of the guys that I follow calls it a lie-identity. He's like, you don't know who you are because you don't know whose you are.
Exactly, because we listen to the lies, most of the lies that have come from the enemy.
I heard a pastor recently say, we have learned to hold steadfast to our identity in Christ, to hold strong to our calling in Christ, and to hold very loosely to our assignment in Christ because it will change.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mom, politician.
Yes, it does.
Now, am I mistaken? Wasn't there a global news story that started with your name from a few years back in a marriage certificate?
No, that would have been the county clerk at the time. That was right at the same time as my library book deal. Yeah.
Okay. That was a concerted, conscious effort to change this community.
I feel like it, yes. Because it's changed. I moved here in 2004 and it's changed so much since then. So yeah, I definitely feel like it.
I wonder sometimes when we think about territories and we think about principalities and powers and the rulers in dark places and the prince of the power of the air, that we have to realize that there are target zones.
Oh, yes.
That have been stalwart places of battle in the past that the enemy looks at and is like, if I can conquer that stronghold, there's a path. If I can take out that bridge, it changes everything. And for many of us, we operate in that neophyte mind and also in that myopic mind. I don't know what I should know, and I only focus on what matters to me today.
Yes.
How do I get more money in my paycheck? How do I get the pawn shop to give me more money for this thing, whatever it is? But those little distractions, those little issues of life, they're the weeds.
Well, we would have witches show up at the school board meetings, and some of them would bring crystals and put them under chairs, and so definitely spiritual warfare. And to some people, I guess this would be controversial, but Granbury also has a long history with the Freemasons as well. And if you probably know the history there and what that's all rooted in, as well as I do.
I asked a pastor, how long has the spirit of Masonry been in this church? And the pastor was like, there's no such thing here. Like,
yeah, there is. It's just a little bit down the road, isn't it? And then there's cornerstones.
100 yards from here. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's cornerstones all throughout the community.
Yeah.
People haven't really looked into the roots of Freemasonry and where
don't mess with them. They're
Oh,
like
I
the
know.
gay community.
No,
They have the right to
know.
exist. They can
There
do
you
their
go,
own
Melanie,
thing.
digging up more stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we live on top of the graves of many that have paid the price to keep us free, and many who have paid the price to destroy us as well.
Yes, it's true. The blood cries out from the ground. It did from the time of Cain and Abel.
Yep. That's what it said. And if the people don't, the rocks will.
That's right. They
So,
will.
if you had something to say to a mom who's saying, I hate what they're doing to our kids, I hate what they're doing to our community, I hate what they're doing in politics, I hate what they're doing in the news and the media and the video games, etc., what would you say to a mom who's saying, I'm terrified to get involved, but I'm sick of standing idly by and watching?
I would say that God makes us brave. He makes us brave. I would say to pray about it and make sure that that's what God's calling you to do, first of all. But when you pray about it, to ask Him that, to make sure that you're being obedient to what He's calling you to, and to know that people would always say, well, you're just a mom. Well, just a mom is a very powerful...
Yeah, so is Sarai.
Yeah, a very powerful thing. We shape in our own homes what the next generation believes, who they are. It is the most powerful position, and our society has done a lot to ruin that and to lie to us and to say, no, it's to be a big career woman. Well, it's not. It's informing the next generation. But if there's an issue that you feel strongly about on your heart, to pray about it and to get involved and to be the mama bear and to set that example. I'll tell a really quick story about my kids. When the book thing happened and I stood up and I said something, I worried about how it would affect my kids. Well, all three of my kids are very outspoken. But not too long after that, they were walking through the neighborhood, and one of their friends, there's a bully in the neighborhood, and he beat up one of their friends, and they stood up and fought back with that bully. And they came home and they said, Mom, you taught us when you stood up to say something about the books, that to be bold and to stand up. And so all three of my kids are bold, and that's who I raised. I don't want kids who go along with culture. I want kids who question culture, question it against biblical, what the Bible says. That's what we're raising. We're raising warriors, but why can't we be warriors too?
I would love to think I raised the next Charlie Kirk, but the evidence isn't there yet.
Well,
we'll
maybe you planted the seed and it just needs time to grow.
I'll take that. Any last words you want to share?
My last words would just be to be bold, to pray for God's will in your life, in your children's life, to pray that what you're doing is obedient to what Christ is calling you to do, and to know that, I guess my final thought is, we make plans and God laughs. Just to always be asking, what is it that He wants us to do? And then never to be fearful, because to remember that if you're doing what God wants you to do and you're being obedient, it's not just you. There's an army that goes with you, a heavenly army.
Amen. Melanie, thank you for being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
For those of you watching Storypower TV, look, I hope you found a lot of inspiration in this conversation. There's so much more, obviously, that we could talk about. We could be here for hours talking about the steps and the process and the people who've done bad things and said hard words and destroyed reputations and character, and the people who have spoken untruth for the purpose of winning a political gain or changing a surface issue. The reality is, we do what we do because we believe Christ is King. We do what we do because we believe in eternity, and that if you don't know Him, when your days on earth come to an end, the price to be paid is more than you can bear. I don't care if you agree with me or you don't. I'm thoroughly convinced that eternity is heaven or hell. You are going to live forever. The only question is where. And if you don't know Jesus like that, I'm going to challenge you. Just ask Him who He is. Ask Him, do you love me? You might be surprised that you get an answer. You might be surprised with the answer that you get, but it won't be my answer. It'll be His. And you need to know that answer. Wherever you are in life right now, just cry out to Jesus. Scream at Him, yell at Him, cuss at Him if you have to. He's a big boy, He can take it. But He will also come to your place and put you in your place and then put you in His arms. Just climb up in His lap. Call Him Daddy. He'll let you know that He loves you, and He's got this. I'm J Loren Norris with Storypower TV. Have a blessed day. I encourage you to go to storypoweracademy.com and check it out. Look at the different classes, the different levels, the different things that are available. You can take a lot of them a la carte. But spend some time there and see if that's the kind of thing that would change the way you communicate as a leader, as a pastor, as a counselor, as a political leader. And if that will help you, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Again, only 10 people in the Elite Speakers. You will have to apply for that. But if you're a candidate, I'd love to have that conversation with you. I'm J Loren Norris with Storypower Academy. I look forward to seeing you inside.
Hi, my name is Christina Knowles, and I just got done taking J Loren's Storypower Masterclass. It was amazing. I took away so much information. One of the things that I really enjoyed being formally trained in media many years ago is the call to action. I will use that with every speaking engagement, and I'm so grateful that Loren just spoke truth into his teachings, and he is a true professional. And I know this might sound weird, but I've been taking certifications in different classes over the years, and Loren is not boring. I can't even believe I got here at 9, and then the class went by so fast that I was like, it's time to go already? And I was shocked that it was time to go already. So it's an awesome class. You're going to enjoy it, I promise. Bye.